Oh, hey everybody, welcome to Cindy Certified Recipes. You caught me just dusting off the dirt of these mushrooms here that we're going to use today in an old family fave, Jagerschnitzel. And if you're not sure what that is, you're about to learn all about it. But before we get to that, I would sure appreciate if you guys would hit that subscribe button and also that notification bell so you get all my upcoming videos. First dibs to you. So let's get going on this Jagerschnitzel. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of background on Jagerschnitzel. And Jaeger meaning hunter. And so hunter is the sauce, this glorious sauce that I'm going to be making and showing you. And this sauce is so good, you'll just want to eat it on its own, like put it in a bowl and eat it like soup. And you can put it not only just on this, but you can put it on chicken and steak and anything you want a glorious mushroom sauce on. And since it is a mushroom sauce, I don't like hunting in my sauce for mushrooms. I want to know they're there and see them there. And so we've got a lot of mushrooms going on here. And I started chopping on these since there's a lot to chop up, but I still got a few more to go. So let's go back to the Jagerschnitzel. So Jager meaning Jaeger, hunter. And Schnitzel, of course, is thin sliced meat. And you can use any type of thin sliced meat and pound it. Normally pork is used, but you can use beef and even chicken. I actually want to try this sometime with unbreaded elk medallions. I think that would be totally awesome. And if I do that, I will let you know. So we're going to continue on chopping our mushrooms here and continue with our Jaeger sauce. These are pretty big criminis, and I've mentioned before that usually when I like to use mushrooms, I like to use criminis because they don't melt down like a button mushroom. They kind of keep their size, and so I like using these the most when I'm doing anything with mushrooms. And since they are pretty big, I like to cut them in half and then just slice them from there. And you don't want them super thin sliced, just a little chunky. So I'm just going to slice up the rest of these guys here and get them in the bowl. That's it for those. Get them all in the bowl. And now I've already taken all the little papers off the garlic, and I'm just gonna crush those. I like to crush them when I'm doing a sauce because I don't want those bits in the sauce. So let's get my little crusher here. So that's about a generous tablespoon of garlic for that. And now I'm going to chop some nice smoked bacon. I'm going to use about half of that. It's quite lean. As I've said before in past videos, I like to buy lean bacon, but it kind of bites me a little bit when I want to render it for fat. But if I have to cook more, I will do that, but I'm just gonna cook this up because I want that lovely smoked bacon fat. And I want to cut this up in little pieces. I might as well cut it all up because, you know, like I said before, a girl's got a snack. All right, there's that bacon. Wipe my hands off a bit, and now we're going to get to flattening our little pork cutlets. And this is just pork tenderloin, and I already bought them, some of them, kind of on the thin side, so I don't have to pound them a ton. And I'm going to show you how a lot of people buy them, or if you buy like a whole tenderloin, you'll probably cut them like this, because it's easier to cut if you're cutting it yourself into steaks like this than it is to cut them thin like that. And I personally, you don't have to, but I like removing the fat layer. I don't like biting into that one. I'm biting into my schnitzel. So I'm gonna do one of these at a time. Just remove that fat. And everybody has their own way of pounding these. And I'm going to show you what I like to do. I like to get some, this is heavy duty foil. Let's take this board out. Some heavy duty foil. And I put my little cutlet down there. And then I just use a Ziploc bag. Put it down. And I use the smooth part of the mallet, not the little spiky part. And I don't like it uber thin. Some people say that's the only way to do it. But you know me, I always tell you, you do it the way you like it. And you want it even. You don't want any high spots that cook differently than a low spot. And it also helps when you're pounding to kind of smooth it out like this. You'll see that when I do a little bit. Let's take a look at that. That's looking very nice. So I'll put him back on the plate. Get our next one. You guys are gonna think this is kind of weird, but I actually like the thickness of this, like pie crust. So that's what I judge by when I'm feeling it like this, not only for high spots, but it kind of feels like how when I make my pie crust, that thickness. And you also find too, depending on the pork you buy, sometimes it's very compliant and it flattens very easily. Other times you really got to kind of, put some muscle into it. So we're just going to keep moving on here. I also find it easier to deal with these smaller pieces versus, most of the time you see schnitzel and it's like these giant, platter size pieces. And it looks cool and all, but when you're actually the one making it, it just makes it harder to deal with, the flouring and all that. So I like these smaller pieces because by the time you pound them out, they're a nice size to put on a plate with the other accoutrement. So we will continue pounding. I like that. Put that one on the plate. And now we're gonna get to our thick guy. So first what I like to do with these thicker guys is cut that fat off. Like so. And then we're just gonna butterfly them. You don't want to cut all the way through. Just bend it over like that. Put them on the foil and pound them flat. I'm liking that. Onto the plate he goes. And now we're going to take all these great ingredients over to the stove and start our Jaeger sauce. You're going to want to start this off with a nice high-sided pan because we're going to keep adding and adding and it'll break down, but you're still going to want that high sides going on. Or if you don't have one like this, you can actually even use a stock pot if you have that. So now that this is warmed up, our bacon is going into the pan. And that is going to render down. You don't want to do this quickly because I want that bacon to be crispy and I want all the fat rendered out of it. So that's going to take 10 to 15 minutes. You can see that our bacon is really nice and crispy, looks gorgeous. And all that nice bacon fat that has rendered out. And so I'm going to be collecting the majority of that bacon, set it aside. We're going to be adding it later to the sauce. But for now, I kind of want it out of the way so I can brown my onions and garlic and mushrooms. You don't have to get every speck out, but just retrieve the majority. Set it aside. And then we're going to be adding 1 onion, chopped fine. Now, making a sauce is done in layers. And this is not, you know, dump everything and everything turns out beautifully. You have to take your time and build your layers for your sauce. And believe me, you will reap the benefits later. So we're going to be browning these onions in this bacon grease. And if you end up with not enough bacon grease, feel free to add butter to it. And so I'm going to turn that heat up just a little bit. And we're going to wait for those onions to get a nice brown. You can see that our onions are starting to brown. And that's the point when I like to add in the mushrooms because they're going to need to get brown too. But as you know, mushrooms absorb a lot of fat. And so I'm going to add some butter into this pan. And you know I like to use high-fat butter. Today I'm using Kerrygold. And so I'm going to let that melt a little bit. And then I'm going to add my mushrooms down into the pot. I might even have to add more butter because mushrooms are like little sponges. So we'll go with that for now. Add these chopped up mushrooms we did earlier. I'm going to go ahead and just add some extra butter because I can tell that's going to need it. I know it looks like a lot, but you'll be happy, believe me. That's not the end of adding butter. So I'm going to get all these mixed and coated. And then these are going to saute for, probably a good 20 minutes to get them all nice and brown. And after I get them a little coated with butter, I'm actually going to sprinkle a little salt on there because the salt helps bring the moisture out of the mushrooms. You don't want moisture, you don't want water in your sauce. That is kind of your nemesis. So I'm going to just take a little bit of salt. You don't want a ton. That was maybe a teaspoon. But but that'll help take that moisture out of those mushrooms and help brown them up for you. And so I'm gonna just let them sit and brown, and then I'll turn them and they'll brown, and so it's a bit of a process, but we will get there. And we'll be right back. I've had this cooking now about 10 or 15 minutes at a pretty good clip. And you can see how cooked down those mushrooms are and that they've started to brown. You'll see as I turn them that they are getting browner. And before they have finished, this is the point where I like to add the garlic that we crushed. Okay, just stir that around. Just so that it's nice and distributed throughout the pot. That looks great. And I'm gonna smooth it all back out, and it's gonna continue to cook. I want those mushrooms even browner than that, so we'll be right back. You can see how nice and brown that is. I've turned the heat down a little bit. The mushrooms are looking fantastic. That whole mixture is just where I want it to be. And there's still just enough moisture in there from the butter to start making our roux. And to do this, I like to add the flour. About 4 tablespoons. And this is where I like to add my dry mustard, because if you add it later, it'll clump. It's about a teaspoon of dry mustard. And I like to add ketchup. A lot of people add tomato paste and then vinegar. And then they actually will add a little bit of sugar, whereas ketchup has all that in there already. So use the ketchup, it just makes it a lot easier. And we'll give that a good stir. So that's absorbed all that moisture, and it comes together almost like a dough. But it's a roux. Let that cook just a little bit. I'm going to be deglazing that here in a second with red wine. And I usually like to always buy a nice Cabernet Sauvignon. That was about 1.5 cups. I'm going to turn that heat back up because I want to cook off that alcohol flavor and get all that roux absorbed into the wine. Here's why I also like to add my beef base. That's a good tablespoon beef base. Just kind of stir that in. This, if you've watched some of my other videos, is very similar to my stroganoff sauce and very similar to my rouladen sauce. Now we're going to start adding our beef broth. And I like to do this a little bit at a time. Again, you're adding layers of flavor, and you're also keeping an eye on how thick you want your sauce slash gravy. Is that beautiful color? That's what all your work is going in for, is that color. And then when it's done, it'll just be something you want to drink. It's so good. This sauce just is excellent. I'm gonna let that come up to a boil here in just a second, and then probably add just a little more beef broth to that. There's our nice boil. You can see it's still pretty thick. So I'm going to add more stock, broth. You could use either one. And I gotta tell you, I think sauces look and taste the best with this method and using flour. Cornstarch, in my personal opinion, gives it kind of a weird look, and also kind of a weird mouthfeel, but that's my palate. And so I recommend using the flour and not cornstarch. Not unlike if you've seen my turkey gravy series, it takes time to build the gravy, and it gets to a point where it stabilizes and it stops thickening and it just becomes just this perfect consistency. And that's why I'm showing you these steps for people who haven't made gravy before, or I know quite a few people who are actually intimidated by gravy and they won't cook anything that has anything to do with gravy. And so I want to just show you all this and what it looks like as it goes. So if you are one of those who are intimidated by this, you can see that it's easy. And if it's too thin, you can always make a beurre manier that you'll see from one of my past videos. Or you can mix a little flour with water and put that in there and thicken it. And if it's too thick, you can always add more beef stock or broth or even water to make it just the right consistency for you. Also, just letting it reduce will thicken it up. So don't be afraid. Just give it a shot. That's 32 ounces of beef stock, you guys. And this is also the point where I like to add just a splash of Worcestershire sauce. So splash, splash, splash. And I also like to add in my herbs now, and this is fresh thyme, and I like to just add it whole like this. I don't bother taking the leaves off the little branches because they will fall off for the most part once this has cooked, and then you can just pull those out. Most of them will all be nice and in your sauce. You don't have to sit there pulling them off. I'm going to add a good teaspoon of black pepper. And a teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to add in that bacon we made earlier. Well, most of it. Some of it magically disappeared. So this is our sauce, you guys, and you can see it is not only visually stunning, but it is totally delicious, and that's why I love making it. And so I'm going to be turning this heat down and putting the lid on, and it is going to sit here and simmer, and I'm going to put it off to the side to simmer, and then we're going to get going with those pork cutlets. With our Jaeger sauce finished and off to the side simmering, we can concentrate now on breading our schnitzel. And I've already just lightly salted our pork cutlets. And I'm going to start off by just dredging them in flour. Make sure they're all coated. Got a stubborn spot. Then into the egg. This is 4 eggs, 2 cups of flour, and 2 cups of breadcrumbs. I like to just make sure that there's no bare flour spots before it goes into the breadcrumbs. For some reason, sometimes the flour's like, no, you won't coat me with egg. And then over to the breadcrumbs. I don't like to press super hard, but just give it a little firm tap. That looks great. Put it off to the plate and start that over. And here we have our cutlets all nice and breaded, and we're going to get all set up to get those all fried up, and I'm going to wash my little mittens off my fingers. After breading our cutlets, we got our oil all heated up, and technically you're supposed to cook these in ghee or clarified butter. That's a little pricey, so I'm using vegetable oil, and I put a big dollop of clarified butter in there to give it that flavor. So we're going to start frying these babies up. And you want just enough oil in there to allow them to float. I like to give them a little shake. Keep that oil going around them. And you know, these are super thin, so they are going to cook up fairly quickly. Just about there, looking nice and golden. Right, grab it. That's looking perfect. So just gonna shake that off, and you can blot it on paper towels or just put it on a rack like I do. And then go on to your next piece. Looking excellent and golden. And now that those are all fried up, I'm going to turn off this heat, and we're going to go plate it up with our Jaeger sauce. All those beautiful smells, and it's all come together, and our beautiful schnitzel is here, and the Jaeger sauce is here, and I like to put it in this big bowl to ladle it out so everyone can put on as much or as little as they want. And it's also maybe a good idea to put it in a little gooseneck gravy bowl, whatever you like. But I mean, I could just eat this out of that, I'm telling you. So we're gonna put some sauce on our schnitzel. I don't wanna make too much of a mess, which I always make a mess. And you don't wanna totally cover the schnitzel because you wanna leave some of that crispy, that lovely crispiness there. And I'm gonna take a bite. Nice and crispy if you can hear that. Get the sauce. Can you hear that crunch? And this sauce, heaven in a bowl. You guys have to try it. And I'm telling you, all this sauce, you can use it on schnitzel, you can put it on a steak, you can put it on chicken. I don't know about fish, but it's so good, I'd try it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please don't forget to subscribe and also hit the like button, and we'll see you on the next episode of Cindy Certified Recipes. Even if you're not into German food, you're going to love Jagerschnitzel. And remember, if it's time tested, top-notch ingredients, and the talk of the table, it's Cindy Certified.